Hey guys, we're back to talk about the history of Brother Voodoo. Owing to the relative obscurity of this character in the 20th century, we're going to wrap up his time in the 90s and head right into the 2000s. Essentially the final part in this character's first chapter, with the next part going into his road to becoming Dr. Voodoo, and for a while, the Sorcerer Supreme. But for now we'll be dealing with his appearances in books such as Black Panther and Gambit. For those who haven't, be sure to subscribe to Comic Island for more videos about comic books, including Brother Voodoo's origins and history up until this point in the 90s. Not long after Jericho Drumm's encounter with Blade, Hannibal King went to Greenwich Village, visiting a small club emerged called the Voodoo Lounge. Though hardly popular, it became a favored place of gathering for those with actual magical experience. King came here seeking the Amulet of Damballa, and met with the owner of the club, a woman named Topaz. She brought Hannibal to meet Collette Drumm, Jericho's niece, who helped Hannibal find the amulet. Collette has never been seen directly interacting with Jericho, but appears to be in contact with him, or at least was around this time, as she knew Hannibal had just worked with Brother Voodoo and was motivated to help the man. As for Jericho himself, he was focused on a dark disturbance he sensed brewing in the technologically advanced kingdom of Wakanda, where something was causing the barrier between life and death to be weakened. Sporting a new outfit, he traveled to this land and discovered an associate of the Panther named Everett Ross, who was hiding out in the home of a villain named Erik Killmonger. Jericho transported himself and Ross to Harlem, where Black Panther was currently being attacked by an ally of Killmonger named Boss Morgan. Panther and his allies, local superheroes Falcon, Goliath, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage, quickly dispatched Morgan and her gang of villains. Brother Voodoo then transported Ross and Black Panther to T'Challa's temporary headquarters in Brooklyn, where they found the Hulk rampaging. Ross was able to calm the Hulk down, fortunately, as the monstrous being had been manipulated into attacking the area through a transmitter. Now allied with the Panther, Jericho and T'Challa traveled back to Wakanda to investigate the disturbance together. Intuiting that his past foe, Erik Killmonger, was involved and the one that returned from the dead, the King of Wakanda commanded Brother Voodoo to seek out a relic that he suspected was involved in this, called the Resurrection Altar. As it was in a remote area of the kingdom, T'Challa tasked his loyal advisor Zuri to aid Jericho in this quest. They went to the altar where Jericho began meditating alone for hours, until the Panther himself arrived. This altar had been a long part of Wakanda's history, but Black Panther despised the place, as it was built around a strange stone that emitted an unusual radiation. Local residents would use this energy to conduct dark rituals, including ones that could very well raise the dead. However, the purpose of Jericho's quest was largely meant as just a distraction for Zuri, while T'Challa dissolved Wakanda's parliament in an effort to push back against Killmonger's schemes to ruin the country's economy. So when T'Challa did finally show up at the shrine, he was confronted by an enraged Killmonger and his army. Black Panther was forced to battle this gathered force alone at first, and though Jericho claimed he was only there to deal with the rift between life and death, not wanting to get involved himself, he had Daniel's spirit possess Killmonger, who forced the villain to attack his own forces, leading them to retreat. Erik, however, confidently stated they would return in greater numbers. Black Panther realized he would need to settle things between himself and Killmonger through an honorable means, in order to hold his rightful place at the throne in the eyes of his people, including Killmonger's men. To that end, he had them go to Warrior Falls, a place where Black Panther and Killmonger once dueled, nearly leading to the death of T'Challa. The two men began a fierce duel, while Brother Voodoo sought out an old ally of his, Mark Spector, also known as the Moon Knight. Though Mark had distanced himself from the entity Khonshu, the being that led to him becoming Moon Knight in the first place, he still had a connection with that deity, and Jericho needed that connection to restore the mystical imbalance created by Killmonger's resurrection. Meanwhile, with their duel lasting a total of 13 hours, including some breaks, Jericho returned with Moon Knight just as Killmonger managed to deliver a nearly fatal blow, rendering Black Panther comatose. Realizing the king hadn't yielded, nor was he dead, Everett Ross revealed to Killmonger he had been established as the King of Wakanda in T'Challa's absence. Thus, the interim king immediately declared an end to the challenge and surrendered, making Killmonger the new King of Wakanda. Confirming that Erik's resurrection had destabilized the afterlife, and repeating it with T'Challa the same way would be profoundly dangerous, especially considering the resurrection alters dark energies. Voodoo instead devised a different plan to restore Black Panther using Moon Knight. Jericho teleported everyone to Tranquility Temple, a holy site in Wakanda. Joined by Dr. Tambak, Wakanda's royal surgeon, they set about to heal T'Challa both physically and spiritually. To help Black Panther's spirit, Jericho sent Moon Knight's Ka to the afterlife, where they sought out Khonshu, who would be able to heal T'Challa while also restoring balance to the world and the afterlife. While they did so, in the real world, Everett Ross impatiently waited for results. After 8 days of no results, he sought out Brother Voodoo for answers, only to find Jericho Drumm near death with his throat slit wide open. Meanwhile, in the realm of spirits, Black Panther and Moon Knight found the souls of past kings of Wakanda, all slain, when they were suddenly attacked by a sinister and powerful being known as Nightmare. The very presence of Nightmare within the spiritual realm plagued Everett Ross with nightmares even in the real world, while he was awake approaching Brother Voodoo's apparent corpse. The two were eventually discovered by members of the Dora Milaje, Wakanda's special forces. They were able to save Jericho while Black Panther managed to defeat Nightmare, though only because they were in the spirit realm and not in the realm of dreams, where Nightmare is far more powerful. Brother Voodoo barely survived the encounter, and only did so by reaching a meditative state that slowed his bodily functions to a crawl. Recovering, he informed T'Challa that a person called Malice was the one who attacked him, a villain apparently created by Killmonger. Though Black Panther would confront Malice shortly after this, Jericho's vocal cords were badly damaged, and he would need advanced microsurgery to restore his ability to speak. It would take time for him to recover, and when he did, he returned to his life in New Orleans. Now an established and powerful practitioner of the mystic arts, the scope and powers of Jericho Drumm began to expand. His time in Wakanda proved how his teleportation range had improved considerably, and now he was able to travel across most of the globe in an instant with ease. Meanwhile, Jericho became one of the many beings who could regularly sense some significant mystical events as they occurred across the world, putting him in league with more powerful magic wielders at the time. It was because of his growing power and already existing fame in New Orleans that Jericho Drumm caught the attention of Morgan Penrose, one of the most infamous occultists in the city. Penrose invited Brother Voodoo, along with every other major player in the world of the occult that lived in New Orleans, to attend an exclusive viewing of the Incio Aquilis, one of the first tarot decks ever created, if not the first ever made. It had 4 extra cards in its major arcana, deemed too powerful for humanity. Nobody had dared to even view the cards in centuries, let alone read from them, until that night. Just then, the mutant and thief known as Gambit raided Penrose's home in an effort to steal the deck for a job he had recently been hired for upon moving back to the city by Morgan's niece, Lily Penrose. Though Morgan remained confident his security would handle any intruder, they were deftly outmaneuvered by the thief, such that when Penrose led Brother Voodoo and the others to the tarot deck, the occultist was shocked to see it gone. Though the theft made Gambit the target of various factions and criminals from across New Orleans, the rest of these events largely escaped the notice of Brother Voodoo. It was only later that Gambit eventually came into contact with a young mutant named Emery Arcano, who was ruthlessly killed by New Orleans police. In revenge, Emery's aunt, a powerful voodoo witch, resurrected Emery, along with all other corpses in the city, to take revenge. This quickly caught the attention of Brother Voodoo, who worked to save as many civilians as he could from the rampaging undead. It was in the streets of New Orleans, amidst the undead horde, that Brother Voodoo met Gambit. They introduced each other, and Gambit demonstrated his powers over kinetic energy by destroying some zombies. This impressed Jericho, who in turn showed off his command of fire and superhuman strength. At Brother Voodoo's suggestion, Gambit learned he could use his powers, which only work on non-living objects, on the undead, since they weren't alive. This proved remarkably effective against zombies, and the two began to feel like a formidable team when working in tandem. However, Gambit lost his spirit when he recognized one of the dead among the crowd, and though Brother Voodoo tried to encourage the young man, the mutant fully lost faith when they were suddenly attacked by a fully powered, zombified mutant, Emery Arcano. Emery, in life and death, had a mutant power that gave him an impenetrable force field, and in response, Gambit simply fled. Following him, Jericho noted Emery was specifically targeting and chasing after Gambit. The two managed to briefly escape from Emery's clutches and ran into New Orleans police detective Tanaka, the woman who shot Emery in the first place, where they learned of Antoinelle Arcano, the aunt who cast the undeath spell, and sought her out in an attempt to put the zombies across the city down for good. Gambit also realized he'd met this woman before in an attempt to save her from the zombie horde earlier, a deed that did not go unnoticed by the witch. They went to Antoinelle's home, only to find a horde of undead waiting for the duo. Using his command over nature, Brother Voodoo summoned a swarm of alligators and snakes, who decimated the zombies. Though they were nearly overpowered by Emery, Antoinelle stopped her nephew when Gambit saved the old woman from Tanaka, who was trying to shoot the Voodoo Witch. Antoinelle relinquished her spell, and Gambit was content to let her live with the guilt of her actions. Tanaka wanted to arrest the elderly woman, but the mutant quickly pointed out the detective had no real evidence of any actual wrongdoing. In response, the corrupt police officer swore revenge against Gambit. Together, the two heroes put the undead to rest, leading them back to their graves. As they did so, Jericho revealed he was starting up a new psychology practice in the city, wanting to go back to his role as a clinical psychologist from before his time as Brother Voodoo. He suggested that Gambit might benefit from some treatment, though it is unclear if the mutant ever took up the offer. And that's it for now, or at least this section of my Brother Voodoo storytelling, but we'll be back, at some point, to talk about the next major phase in Brother Voodoo's life. And it's not him becoming a clinical psychologist again, but rather a howling commando. See you guys next time on Comic Island.